The date is May 16th, exactly 2 weeks before the release of F1 25. Almost a year ago, F1 24 released. With an inconsistent handling model, along with many bugs and key issues, the game has grown to be hated by many. But what if I told you not everything was as bad as it seemed? Was it really the worst F1 game ever made, like some would like to claim? Or was there more than meets the eye? That's what we're gonna find out in today's video. I want to preface this by saying that the majority of my 800 hours of playtime were spent on league racing or preparing for an upcoming league race. So this retrospective is mainly going to be based on my experience as a semi-competitive league racer. Don't worry, we're getting there. Stay until the very end because there's quite a few things that Codemasters have massively improved upon, but they have been overshadowed by bigger issues. Is the racing better or worse because of it? On release, the handling was interesting, but I don't think it was as bad as people made it out to be. And this is something I talked about in one of my first ever videos. Damn, what a journey it has been. Yes, on release, we had the first ever record at 1080 on the F1 games. You could crank the wheel and the car would just turn indefinitely, which gave this feeling of uncanniness due to the unrealistic slip of the tires in-game. But here's something that you might not know about the handling model this year. F1 24, to my knowledge, is the first game by Codemasters that tried to make the suspension settings more dynamic in relation to the game world. What does that mean exactly? Well, in previous years, the setup settings were rudimental at best. The wheels were not really connected to the chassis of the car. The behavior of the car was entirely dependent on the values you would set as your suspension values, which is not really realistic. In F1 24, however, they've actually made the transition from the old system to something a lot more dynamic. Spring compression is something that's been newly added to the game. You might notice this under high downforce loads. If your suspension settings are too soft, then you might bottom out, or you might suddenly lose the car due to the rapid compression and uncompression of the springs. But if you run stiffer wings at the same downforce loads, the suspension will actually do its job and provide more stability at high speed. If you're unfamiliar with the word suspension or just generally how to set up your car, I have a video talking about this exact thing on my channel, explaining every single setting there is to know about F1 car setup. Definitely go check it out. Back to the semi-dynamic suspension settings we have. It might lay the groundworks for upcoming F1 games for Codemasters to build a more realistic handling model. Whether F1 25 is going to improve on the system remains to be seen. Fingers crossed. The game saw quite a few handling patches, and by the end of it, we had a pretty decent game, even though they chose to revert back to the old default handling model from F1 23. This combined to the tire model in F1 24 gave us the handling that we know and love now. Rapidly flicking the wheel is still a gimmick that works, but if you were to try this in any other sim like iRacing or Assetto Corsa, then you would absolutely shit yourself and die. The car still feels a little too snappy at times, it responds too well to your inputs, but I believe that was a deliberate design choice by the team. Here's why. Before we go on, Codemasters actually improved on a lot of areas in the game, and credits must be given where credits are due. The wet driving is definitely weird at times, but the crossover point whenever you go from dry to wet conditions or from wet to dry conditions are spot on. Wet tires in the game are just as useless as they are in real life. You can drive over wet patches to cool your tires if you're overheating. The setup system is a big step up from F1 23 and all the years before that. The wing functions like they're supposed to in real life. Engine braking actually functions like it's supposed to. The ride height system functions properly, even though we still don't have a proper rake setting in-game. The closer you run your car to the ground, the better your car is going to grip up. This is because of the Venturi effect that is unique to this era of cars. The closer you run your floor to the ground, the stronger this Venturi effect is going to be. Lastly, I really like the fact that tire wear is completely dependent on the track and that you can have uneven tire wear. I'm looking at you, Zenvort. This is what it's like to drive a real F1 car, and we actually get the opportunity to experience this ourselves. Isn't that great? Plus, the hard tires are basically indestructible, kind of like how they are in real life. as realistic as all of that is, this is still a game, and games need to be fun first. Nobody wants every race to be some variation of a one-stopper that includes the hard tire as the center of attention. We need other strategies or other tire compounds to be just as viable. This is why big MOBAs or shooters have dedicated balancing teams to keep things interesting or from falling out of flavor. What I like is for them to keep the uneven tire wear, but allow more flexibility in race strategies. It's a good thing to bring back two-stop strategies in F125, and I'm all here for it. But there's one more thing I'd like to see. It's for track and surface temperatures to have a more meaningful impact on the tire choice. What I mean by that is, maybe a hot sunny day is going to make the C5 tire worse than when the sky is overcast. Hell, completely randomize the tire compounds you get each race weekend. Maybe I'm gonna get C4 to C2 this weekend for my tire strategy, and maybe the next it's going to be the same track, but I'm gonna get C5 to C3. Kind of like how Pirelli will try to bring different tire compounds from year to year just to shake things up. That's going to make things a lot more fun, but also spice up strategies a lot more. Is racing better? Yes and no. A lot has changed. Battery recharge is a lot faster, allowing you to use overtake out of basically every corner. Tire compounds that mimic real life tire wear and tire life. The aggressive turn-in and sharpness of the car is completely new this year. And in case you haven't noticed, there's one unifying theme to everything I've just named, and that is Fortnite. Let me explain. We are in the Fortnite era of the gaming industry, and that includes F1 games. Have you noticed whenever a game does exceptionally well, then every publisher or video game company is gonna want a piece of that pie? First came the loot boxes, and then the battle pass system. And now, due to the huge success of Fortnite, everything needs to be fast-paced, jittery, snappy. It needs to feel like it's esports ready. This exact phenomenon is happening to all the big AAA games right now. Just like scrolling through brain rot every day, we have to keep the constant stream of dopamine to our brain to stay entertained. This is why you can recharge the battery so fast nowadays. And this is why racing is closer than ever before. 5 cars can follow each other within 3/10 of each other. There's always something to do lap after lap. Overtake, defend, whatever it is. Remember in F122 where you were left for dead after you went for an overtake and you had to spend 25 laps recharging your battery? Well, those days are gone. The quote-unquote downtimes are drastically reduced in F124. And this is a good thing, because it made racing a lot more lively. And I think it's made the game a lot more fun too. There's usually a lot more going on throughout the race distance. I believe all of these changes are done with a goal in mind, and it is to encourage wheel-to-wheel battles. And I think Codemasters have done that pretty well, but they might have just overcooked it a little bit, because dirty air is completely absent this year. This helps following other cars, of course, but this also creates a lot more chaos. And with F125, Codemasters actually has a decent shot at striking the right balance and create a really great experience. Now, before I give my final verdict for the game, I want to talk briefly about F1 World. Because whenever you want to play multiplayer, Grand Prix, or time trial, you have to come through here. And after every game session, you're always greeted with this message. The truth is, nobody really uses this feature. It's a shame because it feels like it's something that's been tacked on at the last minute. I get what they're trying to do here, especially with the historical facts and the extra content we get, but the menus are unintuitive and oftentimes it just feels tedious. You have to manually manage every single part you collect. And if you want to disenchant the part, then you need to press down 3 times on the D-pad to do it. And if your inventory happens to be full, then you gotta spend the next 25 minutes going through every single section disenchanting all the parts you don't want, so that you can spend another 20 minutes manually accepting every single part you collected, right up until it's full again, and you have to restart the process all over again. Some quality of life updates would really help F1 World be more accepted by the player base. Remove the inventory limit, give me the option to mass disenchant parts, give me different key assignments in the menu to really streamline the process. Integrated reward screen directly into the game and add it to the end of session messages. Remember in the old Call of Duty or Battlefield games where you would get all your service medals at the end of the match? Yeah, something like that please. That would be really nice. Don't make me have to review and accept every single part that comes in, because that's a surefire way to turn me off and turn me away from this mode forever. In conclusion, F1 24 actually improved on a lot of key areas that went unnoticed because of more glaring issues, which is totally understandable. I only started league racing back in F1 22, so my perspective might differ from somebody who's been playing F1 games for the past 10 years. However, to me, F1 24 seems to have an identity issue. It is to no one's surprise that the traction and handling model has been becoming easier and easier in the hopes of attracting new players to the game. At the same time, a lot of the systems behind the scene are being overhauled to become more realistic. It's stretching itself too thin in order to please the two extremes, the newbies and the seasoned and sweaty veterans. The result is a game that lacks identity. In an attempt to please everybody, it's managed to impress no one. So I have to give it a 6.5 out of 10. The game excels at certain things, but it kind of feels like a transition game between two major titles. But again, you have to give it to Codemasters for trying new things in the game. What did you think of F1 24? And what score would you give it out of 10? Let me know in the comments below. In the meantime, this is Formula Kai signing off, and I will see you very soon in F1 25. Ciao, ciao.